Was this what you thought coming to LA was going to be?
No, especially because I got signed pretty quickly. I got signed when I moved up to LA. Within a year, I got signed.
The world knows Bruno Mars, the superstar, the voice, the showman, the hitmaker who never seems to miss. But behind the lights lived a different story. Contracts whispered about, debts questioned, relationships dissected, and rumors that refused to fade. For years, he smiled through it all. At 39, Bruno finally decides to address the noise head-on. Not with another song, but with the truth. The confessions are raw. The timing is deliberate. The silence is broken. So what has he been hiding? And why reveal it now? Bruno Mars' early struggles. Bruno Mars was only 4 years old when most kids were still struggling through picture books. While other children were playing with toys or watching cartoons, Bruno was already stepping onto real stages, performing 2 shows a night, 5 nights a week. Music wasn't just around him, it was his entire world. His family ran a small musical act in Waikiki, and before long, Bruno became the main attraction. They dressed him in a tiny, sparkling jumpsuit and taught him to move just like Elvis Presley. He didn't just imitate Elvis, he became him. The crowds loved it. People started calling him Little Elvis, and the nickname stuck because he performed with the kind of confidence and rhythm most adults spend a lifetime trying to learn. By 1990, when Bruno was just 5 years old, he had already reached a moment many performers only dream of. He took over the halftime show at the Aloha Bowl, performing in front of 40,000 people. The spotlight didn't scare him, it felt natural. At 6, he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show, standing comfortably on national television like he'd been doing it forever. A few years later, in 1992, he landed a small role in the movie Honeymoon in Vegas and earned $600 for 1 day of work. Years later, he laughed and said that was his first ever Vegas residency. Before he even turned 10, Bruno had already performed close to 1,000 live shows. Growing up like that builds something powerful inside a person. So when he eventually rehearsed for the Super Bowl halftime show decades later, he said it didn't feel scary at all. It felt like recess. But that magical childhood didn't last. When Bruno was 12, his parents divorced, and everything changed overnight. The family act fell apart. The stages disappeared, the lights went dark, and the money was gone. Bruno, his father, and his brother had nowhere stable to live. Some nights they slept in a yellow 1993 Cadillac. Other nights they slept on rooftops in Waikiki. Once they even stayed in an abandoned bird zoo, lying awake while peacocks screamed through the night. They didn't have a real bathroom, so they'd sneak into hotel pool areas just to take a shower. Food was cheap and scarce. Many nights, dinner was nothing more than Spam musubi from 7-Eleven. For 5 long months, they lived without electricity. Bruno practiced his guitar by the moonlight because amplifiers were a luxury they couldn't afford. At school, things weren't much easier. Other kids made fun of his thrift store clothes and his situation, but Bruno didn't let it stop him. He kept chasing music with everything he had. To make money, he impersonated Michael Jackson, earning about $75 a night. That money paid for demo tapes and bus fare. The struggle hardened him. It gave him discipline, hunger, and focus. In 2003, music labels finally started noticing his demos, but they didn't really see him. Executives told him he should be the next Ricky Martin and pushed him to sing in Spanish. Bruno knew that wasn't who he was. He didn't want to be molded into someone else's idea of a Latin artist, so he made a bold choice to define himself. He chose the name Bruno, inspired by a powerful wrestler named Bruno Sammartino. Then he added Mars. Why Mars? Because once a girl told him he had so much confidence, he must be from another planet. The name stuck. In June 2003, at just 18 years old, Bruno moved to Los Angeles. He stepped off the plane with $600 in cash, 3 demo CDs, and Bruno Mars written on his luggage tag. That was it. His first year was brutal. He moved through 4 different places, including a rundown $40 a night motel on Sunset Boulevard and a tiny Koreatown studio shared with 6 other guys. To survive, he lied his way into a DJ job on Van Nuys Boulevard, despite never having touched DJ equipment in his life. He was fired after 2 nights, but the $75 he earned helped keep his phone from being shut off. Some weeks that summer, he survived on nothing but 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. In February 2004, Motown offered him a record deal. The contract was only 3 pages long. Bruno joked that he'd seen breakfast menus thicker than that. The label still didn't know what to do with him. They wanted a Latin pop singer. Bruno wasn't that. 9 months later, they dropped him. No album, no single, nothing. It was humiliating. He had already told his family back home that he'd been signed, but that rejection turned out to be a hidden blessing. So, how did the Smezingtons group come about? Let's find out. The Smezingtons' journey. Another artist passing through Motown around the same time was Philip Lawrence. When he and Bruno crossed paths, something clicked almost instantly. They bonded over the same hunger and the same dream. Both of them were outsiders, both of them desperate to be heard. They made a promise to each other right then. They would create music so good that record labels wouldn't be able to look away, no matter how hard they tried. By 2006, reality had hit hard. Bruno and Philip had almost no money, but their drive was stronger than ever. They didn't have fancy studios or industry connections. Instead, they wrote songs sitting in the back of Philip's battered 1999 Toyota Corolla, parked outside a tiny studio in Hollywood. The studio was run by a man named Ari Levine. Ari had the equipment they needed. Bruno and Philip had the ideas. Since they couldn't afford to pay him, they'd buy him cheap burritos from 7-Eleven as a kind of payment. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Whenever a chord, lyric, or beat felt just right, the 3 of them would shout, "That's a Smeg." The word stuck. Soon they started calling themselves the Smezingtons. They treated songwriting like a full-time job, working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. They didn't just write randomly, they studied. They broke down hit songs piece by piece, trying to understand why they worked. Before releasing even a single song of their own, they had analyzed more than 1,000 tracks. Their first real crack at the industry came from an unexpected place. Bruno's sister, Hae, was working in fashion in West Hollywood. Believing completely in her brother's talent, she slipped one of his demo CDs to Mike Lynn, who worked with Dr. Dre. At first, Mike almost threw the CD away. The voice sounded strange to him, too high, almost like a chipmunk. But then, 43 seconds into the track, Bruno hit a high note that stopped him in his tracks. Mike rewound the song and listened again. That moment changed everything. Mike flew Bruno out for a meeting at Record One Studios. There was no record deal offered, but it didn't matter. Someone important had noticed. In Los Angeles, that kind of attention can be life-changing. It gave Bruno and his team something they desperately needed, belief that they were on the right path. Still, belief didn't pay the rent. To survive, they sold a song they had written for themselves called Lost to the group Menudo for $20,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was just enough to keep them from being kicked out of their home. Then came the breakthrough. Bruno and his team wrote the chorus for Flo Rida's Right Round. The song exploded. It hit #1 and sold 636,000 downloads in its very first week, a digital record at the time. Not long after, they wrote Nothing on You for B.O.B., and that became another massive hit. By the time Bruno Mars finally released Just the Way You Are in 2010, he wasn't some unknown newcomer. Songs he had helped write for other artists had already sold more than 15 million downloads. But how did Bruno's solo journey start? Let's take a closer look. Bruno Mars, solo journey. Bruno Mars didn't burst onto the music scene in a single dramatic moment. His rise was slow, quiet, and easy to overlook at first. His solo journey began with a tiny project called It's Better If You Don't Understand. It was an EP so short you could finish it before a coffee cooled. Just 4 songs, barely 13 minutes long. Released on May 11, 2010, it slipped into the world almost unnoticed. By the end of 2011, it had sold only about 27,000 copies in the United States. On paper, it looked small, disposable, the kind of release most artists quietly move on from. But that EP wasn't empty. Buried inside those few tracks were ideas, melodies, and emotions that would later power something far bigger. It was the calm before the storm. Only 5 months later, in October 2010, Bruno dropped Doo-Wops and Hooligans, and everything changed overnight. This album didn't whisper, it exploded. Made on a modest budget of around $70,000, with no borrowed samples or shortcuts, it became a global monster. In the US, it went 7 times platinum. Worldwide, it crossed 15 million sales by 2020. In the UK, it did something almost unheard of. It stayed on the official albums chart for 400 straight weeks. That's nearly 8 years, longer than legendary albums like Abbey Road and even Thriller. Then came the singles, and that's when Bruno truly took over. His debut single, Just the Way You Are, entered the Billboard Hot 100 on August 7, 2010. Within just 8 weeks, it climbed all the way to number 1. It refused to leave, staying on the chart for 48 weeks and eventually earning a massive 13 times platinum certification. In the US alone, it has sold 6.7 million digital downloads, placing it among the 25 best-selling digital songs of all time. And then came Grenade, bigger, louder, and even more intense. At its peak, it pulled in 559,000 downloads in a single week, making it the 8th largest weekly sales total in music history at the time. It didn't just top the charts in the US, it hit number 1 in 15 different countries. Even more impressive, between January and March 2011, Grenade returned to number 1 on the Billboard chart 3 separate times. Only 5 songs in history had ever managed that. By March 2011, Bruno Mars had achieved something incredibly rare. 2 different songs, each selling over 5 million copies in the US. The only artist who had done that before him was Lady Gaga. At that point, the industry couldn't ignore him anymore. The Grammys took notice. In his very first major awards run, Bruno earned 7 Grammy nominations, including Album of the Year and Record of the Year. No male solo debut artist had pulled that off since Lauryn Hill. While he didn't take home the biggest trophies, he did win Best Male Pop Vocal Performance for Just the Way You Are. He was only 25 years old, the youngest man to win that award since Stevie Wonder back in 1974. The accolades kept coming. Billboard named him the top Hot 100 Artist of the Year. The IFPI crowned him the best-selling global artist of 2011, even surpassing Adele at the peak of her surge. Most artists would have slowed down after that. Bruno didn't. In October 2012, Locked Out of Heaven arrived, and at first, it didn't look like a smash. It debuted quietly at number 34. But week by week, it climbed. 11 weeks later, it hit number 1 and stayed there for 6 straight weeks, from December 22, 2012 to January 26, 2013. That achievement made Bruno the first solo male artist since Bobby Vinton in 1964 to score 4 number 1 Hot 100 hits within his first 2 years. Not even Michael Jackson managed that. Sales followed fast. The song hit 1 million US downloads in just 10 weeks, eventually going 10 times platinum. Years later, it would pass 1.8 billion streams on Spotify. Critics were caught off guard. Rolling Stone called it the police revival nobody asked for, but everyone needed. With its reggae rock groove, the song cut straight through the EDM heavy sound that dominated radio at the time. In under 4 minutes, Bruno shifted the direction of pop music. When it came time to make Unorthodox Jukebox, expectations were clear. The label wanted a safe, polished dance album. Instead, Bruno and his team quietly went bigger and riskier. They stretched the budget, ignored warnings, and experimented with 9 different genres. From the disco sparkle of Treasure to the raw, sensual rock of Gorilla to reggae vibes on Show Me, the album was all over the place. Executives panicked. Bruno refused to compromise. To make the album sound exactly the way he wanted, he gave up 4% of his future royalties just to afford live horns and vintage equipment. It was a gamble, but it paid off. Within a year, Unorthodox Jukebox sold over 6 million copies worldwide. So, did Bruno go for tours? Let's find out. The 24K Magic World Tour. The 2014 Grammys came with even more excitement. Unorthodox Jukebox won Best Pop Vocal Album and picked up 2 more awards that night. Behind the scenes, sound engineers revealed something wild. Each song on the album used over 120 separate audio tracks. That was more than any other album nominated that year, even more than Daft Punk's Random Access Memory. That same night, Bruno's performance caused an unexpected stir. During his gorilla-themed act, he briefly thumped his chest to imitate a gorilla. The moment lasted just 0.6 seconds, but someone still filed a complaint with the FCC. No fine was given, but the moment earned Bruno a strange honor, a 2015 Guinness World Record for the shortest TV performance ever to trigger an obscenity review. After the Grammys, the impact was immediate. Sales exploded. Unorthodox Jukebox jumped 171% on the Billboard 200, one of the biggest Grammy Week boosts in decades, something not seen at that level since Alanis Morissette in the 1990s. Then came Uptown Funk. It began quietly on May 1st, 2014, as a loose jam session in a makeshift studio. The very first version was recorded as a simple voice memo, which Mark Ronson still keeps starred in his phone. What started small turned massive. The final song had 11 writers, got caught up in 5 lawsuits, and finally dropped on November 10, 2014. When it arrived, it took over everything. Uptown Funk went straight to #1 and stayed there for 14 straight weeks, from January 17th to April 18th, 2015. That was the longest #1 run of the entire decade, until Old Town Road later broke the record. At its peak, the song sold 300,000 downloads every week and reached 15 million daily streams worldwide. In the UK, it passed 1 million sales in just 10 weeks, becoming the fastest-selling jazz-influenced single since James Brown's I Got You, I Feel Good in 1965. People couldn't get enough of it. Delta Airlines even reported a 37% increase in first-class drink orders after making it their boarding song. Someone at the airline jokingly nicknamed it Uptown Drunk. The song's influence went even further. In 2015, the BBC used its tempo to teach CPR during a broadcast. But Bruno's next big move almost didn't happen. When he turned in 24K Magic in 2016, his label wasn't impressed. The album had only 9 tracks and ran for just 33 minutes, shorter than some EPs. But Bruno stood his ground. He wanted the album to feel like a 1990s party mixtape, tight, fun, and with no songs worth skipping. When the Grammys arrived on January 28, 2018, 24K Magic completely dominated. It won Album of the Year, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year, making it only the second R&B album of the century to achieve that clean sweep. Bruno took home 6 awards in one night. The boost was instant. Streams of That's What I Like jumped 130%, and the song eventually went 7 times platinum. By April 2018, 24K Magic had sold over 5 million copies worldwide. Even though it never reached #1 on the Billboard 200, the 24K Magic World Tour kicked off on March 28, 2017 in Antwerp and wrapped up on December 30th, 2018 in Honolulu. It included 215 shows across 6 continents. In New Zealand, Bruno broke Beyoncé's record, selling 48,483 tickets in Auckland, more than 4,000 above her 2016 total. By the end, the tour had sold 3.5 million tickets and earned $367.7 million, placing it among the top 10 highest-grossing tours of all time, earning more than U2's Joshua Tree Tour and Lady Gaga's Monster Ball. Every detail on 24K Magic was carefully planned. The talkbox intro on the title track echoed Zapp's Computer Love from 1987. The smooth synths on Versace on the Floor reflected Babyface's 1994 sound. The remix of Finesse with Cardi B was mixed on a 25-year-old console just to capture that early 1990s feel. Even the 9-track length was intentional. Bruno said one of his favorite cassette tapes, Bobby Brown's Don't Be Cruel, had 9 songs per side, and that stuck with him. Critics loved the album. One called it pop's most valuable history lesson. Others said it helped bring funk back into the mainstream at a time when music was dominated by EDM drops. And somehow, even after all of that, Bruno Mars still had more surprises waiting. What other tour did Bruno embark on? Let's find out. Silk Sonic's tour. In September 2018, Bruno Mars stepped into the studio and recorded the hook for Gucci Mane's Wake Up in the Sky in less than half an hour. The song was released on September 14, 2018. It didn't quite hit #1, peaking at 11 on the charts, but it had staying power. By July 2025, it had gone 6 times platinum and racked up an astonishing 1.4 billion streams on Spotify, more than many songs that had officially topped the charts that year. Fast forward to a late night in Las Vegas. The Dolby Live Theater was packed, buzzing with anticipation. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Bruno appeared in the spotlight wearing a shimmering gold tuxedo. The crowd went silent. Then he spoke the words everyone had been waiting for. Silk Sonic is real. Moments later, a smooth, vintage ballad filled the room. The song, Leave the Door Open, officially dropped to the world at 12:01 a.m. Fans didn't just enjoy it, they were hooked. The track soared to #4 on the Billboard charts immediately and climbed to #1 in just 4 weeks, staying there for a full 2 months. By mid-2022, it had been streamed over 2.3 billion times on Spotify. Silk Sonic wasn't just real, they were unstoppable. A year later, Bruno and Anderson .Paak walked onto the Grammy stage, dressed in immaculate white tuxedos. Behind them, 18 string players created a lush backdrop, while the legendary Bootsy Collins sat on a velvet throne like royalty. When the final note rang out, the audience leapt to their feet. That night, Leave the Door Open won Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best R&B Performance. Their album, An Evening with Silk Sonic, dropped in November, recorded entirely the old-school way. One room, no digital tricks, just pure analog magic. It sounded like it had been plucked straight from 1973. By the end of 2022, Silk Sonic's tour had earned nearly $145 million from just 37 shows, almost $4 million a night. Then came a surprise in August 2024. At 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on August 16th, Bruno teased fans to bring tissues. Minutes later, Lady Gaga released Die With a Smile. The song exploded everywhere, breaking streaming records with 27.4 million plays in just one day, beating even Adele's Easy on Me. The music video was cinematic, shot in black and white on vintage 16mm film, featuring only 2 voices, a single chandelier, and flashes of Morse code that fans later translated. The track ruled the charts for 18 straight weeks and went multi-platinum in 32 countries. Its earnings were staggering. At its peak, the song made nearly $1 million a day in publishing royalties, every second worth over $11. At the 2025 Grammys, Bruno and Gaga performed it with a gospel choir behind them. When Bruno hit an 11-second note, fans called him a human saxophone, and the moment immediately went viral. The final vocal had been recorded in one take at 4:12 a.m., complete with the sound of a tequila bottle shattering at 3:18. Bruno left it in, saying it made the song feel alive. So what are your thoughts on Bruno Mars' shocking revelation? Share them with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.